Hey, good evening and welcome to a special edition of Motzei Shabbos Daily Double. We're learning Masechah Shabbos, Perek Yud Beis, Mishnayos Dalet, and hey, if you're wondering where my student tie is, you're not seeing correctly. I am wearing a student tie. My brother asked me where my student tie was because I used to give shiurim student ties. Now it's the winter, so I wear sweaters. Um, but this is a student tie. I'm seeing, it's Ralph Lauren. It probably costs as much to tie. A good tie, right? Okay, let's start. Mishnah Dalet. Akosei shtei osios behelam echad chayav. You write two letters. That's the shir. The Mishnah says you have to write two letters. I've talked about why two letters, because that's something which is significant, something which could be has to be actually a word. It can't just be any two letters. Behelam echad, and one for getting chayav, right? Because if you forgot that Shabbos for one letter and then you remember and you forgot again, it's not chayav. It has to be together. Kosev b'dio, you wrote with black ink. The sound b'sikra b'kumus v'kan. These are all different colors of inks. According to the Mafarshim, they say it's different ways that the inks were made. They're all black, but actually some Sam and Sikra, I think, are translated as red ink. Two different types of red ink. Komos are two types of blue ink. Well, the whole davar shu roshim, anything which leaves a mark, it'll stay for a long time. Al shnei kosei zvayos. He went to a corner where there's two walls. He wrote one letter on one wall and one letter on the adjacent wall. Or he had two pads of paper and they were lying right next to each other on the table. He wrote one letter on one pad, one letter on the other pad. They could write together. It's like writing right on one piece of paper. You write it on your skin. However, if he etches in his skin, I would say it's like a tattoo or something like that. That's the way I want to explain it. But those are mechayav chatas. Those are mechayav chatas. You wrote, right? If you get a tattoo on, you're not like a tattoo on Shabbos. I got a tattoo ever. But if you got a tattoo on Shabbos, would you be chayav for kosev or not? If the person who gave you the tattoo, would you be chayav for kosev? Let's say you're chayav chatas. It's like writing. It's like writing on your skin, right? If I took a pen, I wrote on my skin. So the Mishnah says, according to everybody, you're chayav chatas. Yeshua poter. Yeshua says in this last case, if you're getting a tattoo, you're going to be poter. I'll explain why Rabbi Yeshua says that. According to Ravad Bartur, he says it's not a normal way. According to my explanation, where it's basically a tattoo, I think that is a normal way for most people in the world to get tattoos. So I'll explain why Rabbi Yeshua Potter. So we hold like Rabbi Yeshua, the Yad Chayiv. Hey, kasav b'mashkin b'mei peros ba'avak drachim ba'avak asofrim b'chol davar she'enim eskayim Potter. You wrote with liquids, right? Some of your drinks spilled, or make peros, you squeeze some juice out of an orange or something like that. Ba'avak drachim, you have a little bit of dirt, or ba'avak asofrim. Sometimes when you have a pen, the dry ink, you knock it off and you want to write with it. Anything which is not going to stay for a long time, right? If you write with juice or meiperos, you can just wipe it off. It's not going to stay for a long time. People talk about writing something on a very cold day and letters in the window, a frosty window or something. Again, that's not going to be miskayim. It's not going to last for a long time. It's potter. The reason being because the malacha of ksiva, like all the malachas, have to be something which is a commercial malacha, something which is done in a business-like fashion, and these things are done like children do these things, not real adults, especially not adults who are working in a business. La'achar yado, he does it. Now it's not questionable what this means. La'achar yado, he does it with his left hand, or he does it. It's not good with the left. We talked about left hand before. La'achar yado, he does it like this. He takes the pen and he writes behind him. Beraglo, he puts the pen in his toes and he writes. Befiv, or in his mouth, or rapeko, or he puts it in his elbow, right, area between his elbow and his arm, his forearm. Kozavaz achaz samoch laksav, or something. There was a letter written already on a pad. It was written before Shabbos. He writes one letter next to it. Ksav al gabe ksav, or something was a letter, and he wrote on top of that letter just because it was fading. The skav and lichtov chet v'kasav shnei zayin. He meant to write a chet, and he left off a little bit at the top. It looks like two zayins, the way you write in a Sefer Torah, right? If you leave off the top of the chet, you end up with two zayins in the Torah. Echad ba'aretz ve'echad b'kora. He wrote one letter on the ground and one on the roof. Kosav al shnei kasei abayis, or he wrote on two different walls, even if they're adjacent walls, or al shnei dapi pinkas, on two different pads. They're too far away that most people, when they see the letters, they wouldn't read it as one word. Potter. In all these cases, you're going to be potter. Kosta, because you wrote one letter, you didn't write two letters. Because of osa achas no trikon. Let's say You wrote one letter with a slash over it, right? Sometimes the word kuf is korban, so it stands for an entire word, even though it's only one letter. Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseir Mechai, Yeshua says you're chayav, because even though it's only one letter, people pronounce it as a word. So with more than one letter. Chacham say, you have to actually write two letters. I'll discuss exactly in Ian and Mitzion what exactly the machlok is. We pass in the Chacham. You're not going to be chayav. I'm going to give 2 for 1 Ian Mitzion. I'll explain both of these machlokas. Again, we pater in this case also. Stay tuned. Ian Mitzion coming up next.